Journey on, the magic lies within the trails we ride. Move along, the lightness you seek is by your side.
Welcome back to Journey on Ranch TV. This is our second episode, and if you watch the little clips at the start of this, that's what this episode's all about. So a number of years ago, a couple of years ago now, I had a badass adventurer named Stevie Delahunt on the podcast. So Stevie has raced some amazing races. She's done the Mongol Derby in Mongolia, which is a 1,000-kilometre horse race across the plains of Mongolia. She has done the Gaucho Derby in Argentina. She's raced the, I think, called the Kraken Cup, which is a crazy sailing race in South Africa. And when I had her on the podcast, she was talking about the Gaucho Derby, which is a 500-kilometre horse race, survival horse race across the Patagonian region of Argentina. And at the time, my son and I, Tyler, and I had just come back from riding camels across the Gobi Desert, following the old Silk Road in the dead of winter. And we rode those camels for 300 kilometres. And that was a trip that was organised by another former podcast guest who is also a badass adventurer, Chloe Phillips Harris. And we just come back from that. And when Stevie told me about this 500-kilometre horse race in Argentina, I'm like, well, I just rode camels 300 kilometres across the desert. I could ride a horse 500 kilometres across Argentina. I've been riding horses all my life. So it wasn't long after that I signed up for the Gaucho Derby, not really knowing what I was getting into. So the Gaucho Derby is a 500-kilometre horse race, like I said, across the Patagonian region of Argentina. It starts way up sort of north and ends up at a place called El Chaltén, which is where Mount Fitzroy is. And Mount Fitzroy is this beautiful mountain range. If you've ever seen the Patagonia clothing brand logo, it's got those peaks. That's what those peaks are designed after, Mount Fitzroy. So that's where the finish line is. But the specifics of this race is it's a survival race. So you carry all of your stuff on the horse with you. So your tent, your sleeping mattress or your sleeping pad, your sleeping bag, your food, your camp stove, any medical supplies you might need, and you are limited to a 22-pound pack weight, which includes the weight of your bag. So like my bags weigh 2.2 pounds, the bags empty themselves, so that takes up, so it's 10 kilos or 22 pounds. My bags weigh 2.2 pounds as it is, so that's 1 kilo gone just in the bags themselves. So that's one part of the race. The other part of the race is there are no marked trails. There are vet stations you have to get to, just like in an endurance race. You've got to get to these vet checks, and you are given GPS coordinates and topographical maps. And let's say your next GPS coordinate is, your next vet station is 25 kilometres in that direction. And you look up and there's a huge big mountain there. So you look at your topographical map and you go, okay, well, there's a swamp over here and a river over there. And we've had a lot of rain recently, so we might not be able to ford the river, but the mountain's too steep, so maybe we should try the swamp. It's a bit like that. So that's another part of the race. The winners do the race in about 7 days. Averaging about 45 miles per day, and you get given 10 days to complete the race. So if you're not up the course in 10 days, they come and find you. I'm going to read you a little bit about what the organisers say about the race, just to give you an idea of what this thing is. It says, imagine yourself thundering deep into the wilds of Patagonia on horseback. You've got your steed and you're navigating across some of the wildest terrain on earth, attempting to win one of the toughest and most unusual equine challenges in history. After running the Mongol Derby for over a decade, we knew it was time to grow this new sport of ultra-endurance horse racing we had created, so we went in search of the next world-beating adventure. We've not replicated the Mongol Derby with new scenery, but designed a new race from the ground up, based on the landscape, culture, history and horses of Patagonia and the Gauchos. This is the greatest test of horsemanship and wilderness skills on earth. This is the Gaucho Derby. And it goes on to say it's a 10-day, 500-kilometre multi-horse adventure race. The mind-bending terrain in Patagonia makes this race quite unlike anything else on the planet. It won't just test your skill on a horse, but push you to the limit of your navigation skills, your ability to handle the wilderness, and your physical endurance. The Gaucho Derby is a multiple horse race, but not in the same way as the Mongol Derby. The race is broken down into 40-kilometre or less vetting legs, but you won't be changing horses at every section. The high mountains are a test of skill, not flat-out speed, so the horses won't run out of steam. The flatter pampas sections will see you turning up the miles an hour to eat up the miles. For these sections, you'll be swapping to fresh horses more regularly. One mistake navigating could cost you the race, and wilderness skills will make all the difference as you'll be camping out every night. Racing hours are from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and any penalties will be sat out in real time, and the winner will be the first one who crosses the line. So, and I'll go into a bit more of some of that stuff in a minute, but I'll tell you about how this whole thing went down. So, you know, Stevie had told me about that. And Stevie, what she does, she lives in Bend, Oregon, and she's a horseshoer, you know, she's a farrier, but part of her business is coaching people who want to be endurance riders or want to do the Mongol Derby or the Gaucho Derby. So she has a string of endurance horses. So I signed up for the 2023 Gaucho Derby, and in about August of 2022, I went up to Stevie's for a boot camp. It's a 4-day boot camp where you learn about, you know, navigation skills, you learn map reading, you get to camp out one night and you ride endurance horses. And so I went up there for that, and during my time there at Stevie's, we got the call to say that the 2023 Gaucho Derby, which is supposed to be in February 2023, had been postponed to 2024, which is the one that's coming up now. And this was about day 2 up there at Stevie's, and I was so glad that I heard that news, because I realised I wasn't prepared for boot camp, let alone being prepared for the actual Gaucho Derby. Being up there at Stevie's was my first experience with any distance riding, and I think the first day we didn't ride very far at all. In the scheme of things, we rode about 12 miles, but that's the longest I'd ridden before, probably since I was a kid at least, if I've ever ridden that long, and especially a trot like those endurance horses tend to go at. And I found that my knees and ankles after a while would just kill me. One foot would go numb, and so I thought, wow, this little bit of riding here is pretty painful. I wonder how the real thing's going to be. But, you know, so I did that thing at Stevie's, and we got some techniques to like get stirrup lengths right and do some exercise with your toes and stuff to stop your feet from going to sleep. But that was my first experience with that endurance riding. And when we got the call up there to say that the Gaucho Derby had been postponed a year, but they were still running the academy. So what they normally do every year is the week before the Gaucho Derby, they have what they call the Gaucho Academy. It's for people who want to go and experience the thing without actually doing the race. And so what you do is you go out to the ranch, or the estancia, as they call them in Argentina, to where the race is going to start. You learn all the navigational skills and all that sort of thing. You ride the horses, you ride some distance riding, and then one of the days you actually will go out and ride out for a long way, camp overnight. Then they gather the horses, which they're riding horses, plus mares, plus foals, plus stallions that have all been out running around 100,000 acres for quite a while, and they bring those in. And the young foals, they're going to castrate them and brand them and do things like that. But the riding horses are the horses they're going to have for the Gaucho Derby the week after. So they did that last year in 2023, and so when I was at Stevie's, I thought, well, if I can't do the Gaucho Derby, I'll transfer the money I paid over to go and do the academy. So I went to Argentina to do the academy last year, and so it was such a great experience. You fly into Buenos Aires, and then you fly from Buenos Aires down to a place called El Calafate, and then we meet everybody there, gather, and the next day you get on a bus and you drive quite a long ways out to the ranch where the academy is held, and that's the starting ranch for the actual Gaucho Derby. It's pretty cool. You know, they've got, I think there was maybe 20 of us, I can't remember, but they've got like a big dormitory type thing with camp stretchers set up. So, you know, when you first get there, you go up to the dormitory and you walk in, you just pick a bed, and on your bed is your saddle pad, your saddle that you're going to use, and your packs, saddle packs that whatever they're called, saddlebags, there you go, that you're going to use for the race. So while you're there, you get, we have days of map training and GPS training, all that sort of stuff. We have medical training, and the medical training. So the medics that they have for the Gaucho Derby are a company called Intrepid Medics, and they do all sorts of adventure races around the world. One of the guys, Andre, who's one of the medics, he was a former French Foreign Legion soldier, I guess. And so you're in pretty good hands, but they have the Gaucho Derby, they have the whole thing set up to where they even, because you're in the Patagonian region of Argentina and there's lots of mountain climbing stuff that goes on there and all sorts of crazy expeditions, they have a very good, let's say, rescue helicopter system. They have, these pilots are really good. They're used to rescuing people off ledges in mountains and stuff like that. So they have that there. But when they first started talking about that, it really, the room got pretty quiet, because you start to realize that you are out in the middle of nowhere. They can't drive to places and get you. And the other thing they're teaching you is that you are a first responder. If you're riding along and you come across one of the other people on the race laying on the ground unconscious, you're going to know what to do. So it kind of, as the saying goes, shit just got real when you got to that bit. They do role-playing scenarios. They'll have someone lay on the ground and they talk about what to do if you come along and find someone on the ground. So, like I said, you've got your GPS training and all that sort of stuff. You get to go for, we saddle up and we go for a ride the horses, get used to the horses one day, and then the next day we saddle up, learn about the GPSs, go ride the horses and follow the GPSs and find some vet stations, have a pretend vet check sort of thing. And then, like I mentioned earlier, what you do is we get to one day where you actually fill your packs up with your stuff you're going to need for a couple of overnights. You ride out and you ride quite a ways. You come to some beautiful, beautiful sights. There's this one place you come to, which is this steep, shaly, basically cliff over this valley you come to, and it's so steep that everybody's got to get off and lead their horses down. And when you're leading your horse down the hill, the horses are basically sliding down this shale behind you. So we get in there, comes flat at the bottom there, and we go and cross the river, and then we come to this flat clearing thing beside a river, and we camp for the night. Everybody sets up camp, and then the gauchos make that's what they call an asado, have a barbecue with some lamb, which was really good. They packed it in with us. Next day we saddled up and you go for a big old ride, big long ride, and then you ride some more, and then you ride some more. And we're looking for these horses that have been living out there for probably 12 months. You split up into different groups depending on how wild and crazy you want to get riding. But, if you're kind of timid, they send you with one group, but if you're kind of adventurous and don't mind a bit of crazy stuff, you can go off with another group. And the terrain there, the terrain's absolutely insane. So, you might be going up hills, down hills, that sort of insane terrain from a distance. It looks like it's insane, but there's a lot of it that's flat, and it looks like it's perfectly easy to ride on. It's actually, your horse might step in their left front foot might land here, and their right front foot might land here, and their hind feet might do the opposite. It's this really, my father would call it puggy ground, where it just pumps up. And those horses are like the four-wheel drive of South America. They will gallop across that stuff. And I think when you first get there, you kind of got to get to where you learn to have faith in the sure-footedness of these horses, because I think if you're looking at the ground and you're trying to negotiate around those holes, you can actually get in their way. And it takes a few days to get comfortable with that. But after a while, you realize you can just turn loose of them and they can canter across that stuff. So I ended up in a group that was going to go scouting for horses. Some of them were going to go and wait for horses to be driven towards them. So we got up on top of this really big old rocky plateau sort of thing, and from up there you could see all the horses down below, and it kind of felt a bit like a scene out of The Man from Snow River. Not that we enacted the down the hill from The Man from Snow River right there, but the scenery is absolutely beautiful, and the gaucho that's with us, they just start making noise, and those horses start running, and they end up getting rounded up by the guys who were further down there. So then we get them all back to camp where we were camping, and there's a kind of a fenced enclosure there that they put them in for the night. So we camped the night again there, and then the next morning we get up, and then we take those horses and, oh no, they weren't camped there for the night. Those are our horses. Sorry, our saddle horses were in that enclosure thing. I think we just got those horses to where they were somewhere near our camp, and the next morning we had to get up and go find them again. And that's when Sergio, the guy that owns the place, you know, he speaks Spanish. They all speak Spanish down there, and he was translating, and he said, so if anybody wants to come with me, be prepared for it to be, what were the words translated into English were violent and dangerous, I think. And so I'm like, I'm going with Sergio. And off we went, and yeah, that's when we got to do some Man from Snow River stuff, which I don't have any footage of because I was just too busy trying to stay on my horse and ride down the hills and keep up with Sergio. But we ended up getting these group of horses all together, and then you drive these horses all the way back to camp. And it's just so beautiful riding along behind a herd of horses, you know, especially when they're crossing rivers or, you know, going up hills or down hills, and just, yeah, it was just majestic. It was just so amazing riding behind those horses. And there was a foal there who was an orphan, so somehow during the whole thing he got separated from his mother, and I think we rode 25 miles that day with these horses, and he just kept up with us uphill, down dale. He just trotted along beside you right there, and cute little guy, but just tough horses. And you can see why they're the four-wheel drive horse of South America, because that's how they grow up. And so anyway, when we finally got home, he's now an orphan, so the owner's son, they started bottle feeding him, and from what I heard, he survived, and he's one of the herd, and he's doing really well right now. So that was the academy. That was so much fun. And my son Tyler had come down with me, and he went backpacking while I was on the academy. Then we got together after that and got to go and see some glaciers and have I actually got to have an ice bath. You know about the ice baths? I had an ice bath in a lake that has a glacier in the back of it. I actually had an ice bath. I changed positions there and had an ice bath with an iceberg floating behind me, which was kind of cool. But the academy was, I'd suggest if anybody wants to experience it, you should go down there and do it. But the academy was cool. Met all sorts of really interesting people from all around the world on that. And when you do these types of things, I think part of the fun is the adventure itself, but part of the fun is the people you get to meet. You know, as we learned a saying when we were in Mongolia riding the camels, is you can't do epic shit with basic people. And so you tend to find some pretty epic people. But I came back from there and had a whole year to prepare for the Gaucho Derby 2024. In October, I went up to Stevie Delahunts again, and we chose to do it usually they don't go out after at the end of September in Bend, Oregon, because it's a bit too cold and a bit too wet at times, and we actually chose to go up there then and do another one of these things so we could get cold, wet, test out our gear, because in Argentina you can get snowed on, it can be raining, and when it rains it would rain sideways because like you saw from some of those earlier clips, the wind is absolutely insane. It just blows sideways. Before we went down there, Eric Cooper, who's one of the organisers of the whole thing, he had said the wind is biblical. And you think if someone said the wind is terrible, it's bad, and if they say it's amazing, it's good. But if they say it's biblical, well, there's good things and bad things in the Bible, so I wasn't quite sure what biblical meant, but it's the bad version. It's the wind. I've never experienced wind anything like it. So, if you think about camping, you are camping in an ultralight tent. Like my tent weighs 2 pounds or something. You've got to have ultralight gear that the backpackers use because of your the weight limitations on your gear, and trying to put up one of those tents in 35 mile an hour, maybe 50 mile an hour, depends on what the wind's doing. Sometimes it gets 80 mile an hour, but putting your tent up and having your tent stay up in that wind, especially in ground that could be pretty sandy and stuff, it's quite the challenge. So yeah, so I went up to Stevie's, and you know, they say about the Gaucho Derby that you got to expect the unexpected. And so the plan was at Stevie's is we were going to load up the horses, get taken to a national park up there, get out, get all our gear packed on like we're doing the Gaucho Derby, ride out, camp overnight. Actually, we're going to camp in the place where we were staying, but you're going to take all your gear, come back, unpack everything, put your tent up, do all that stuff, unpack it the next morning, go again, come back, pack it all, you know, unpack it again. And the first day we went out, it was raining, which was good, so we got to test out our wet weather gear. And there's probably 6 or 7 of us, 8 of us riding along, and someone in the back got bucked off because their horse bucked, and they said, I think there was some like yellow jackets or wasps or something attacked the horse. Those of us up the front didn't feel that. So then the next day when we were out riding, it was yellow jackets. We pulled up and we got attacked by a swarm of yellow jackets. There was, if anybody's ever seen the opening scene of the movie Unbranded, it was a bit like that, only there were 7 horses just going off their nut. Like horses, when they get attacked by yellow jackets, it's crazy. And I was lucky enough, I had to pee, so I got off my horse. So we pulled up. Stevie Stevie Adeline was checking the GPS to see where we had to go next. And so she was stopped, and we all stopped, and I was at the back. Got off and handed my horse to one of the other riders who was there, who's also going to be doing the Gaucho Derby, Morgan Kennedy. And I handed my horse to Morgan, and I kind of went over behind a tree, and then I kind of this sensation of something around my face, and then I heard all the horses going off, and then I realised, yellow jackets, yellow jackets. So I got stung all over the face, but all these horses started bucking, and I turned, and there was a scene of 7 horses just bucking and jumping and plunging through the underbrush, and it was, you know, everybody else didn't really get to see it because they're too busy trying to ride their bucking, leaping horse. I got to see the whole thing while I was getting stung in the face. But anyway, we all get that sorted out, and then we get riding again, and we get attacked again later on, and we realise we can't be out here. This is not going to work. And so we rode back home in the rain and packed up and actually went back to Stevie's place, and so we had a change of plans. So then we got there, we unpacked, set up our tent, stayed the night, packed our tents up the next morning, rode from Stevie's place, because you can ride from miles and miles and miles from Stevie's place. I think we rode about 25 miles that day. And then came back, and so, you know, it was just a good experience in go with the flow. Like, things are not going to work out the way you want them to work out, and so you just got to be able to expect the unexpected. So that was my what I thought was going to be my last preparation. Like I said, that was last October. And you know, when I originally signed up for this race, I signed up on my own, meaning I'm going to do it alone. And then a good friend of mine and an amazing horseman, some of you might know of, Dan James, Dan signed up for it. So Dan does a lot of, Dan does a lot of Liberty work. He does a lot of work for different movies and stuff. He does a lot of, print ad stuff. I remember seeing there was a in Vogue magazine, there was a big fold out one year, and it was a picture of Jennifer Lawrence, I think her name is, the girl from the Hunger Games, on one of Dan's horses, rearing up while she had a dress on, and I remember being in the airport in Las Vegas one time, and I looked up and there was maybe a Ralph Lauren ad or something or other with one of Dan's horses in it. I think that was Apollo that was in that one. Swampy was the one that was in Vogue, so Swampy's the grey horse that he won Road to the Horse on. So Dan had signed up for it, and then after Dan signed up for it, then another horseman from Texas, Elliot Holtzman, he signed up for it. So Elliot does a lot of work with Mustangs. Here's a company called Versatile. Him and his wife Katie have a company called Versatile Horsemanship, and they're very versatile. They do lots of different things with horses. And Elliot also helps Dan out a lot with some of the movie stuff, the ad stuff, things like that. And then another guy we know, Craig Moore, who's another horseman from Texas. Craig, he signed up for it as well. And Craig does a lot of training of Mustangs, does a lot of those Mustang makeover things. Fun guy and really, really good horseman. So we've got these 4 musketeers that we've signed up going to do this thing probably for the last year. I know that at least last February they were signed up, because I remember Elliot and Craig were doing a lot of training then. And so Dan's a good friend of mine, but he has not been on my podcast, but he was in Canada one time a few years ago. He took his horses up there. They wanted him to do some work on the TV show Heartland. So Dan's got a team of Palomino horses, and he was up there in Canada working on Heartland. This is just after COVID, I think, because I remember he had trouble getting into Canada because of COVID, but it was just after COVID, and I wanted to have Dan on the podcast. And you know, Dan is a bit of a fly by the seat of your pants kind of guy. You never know what to expect with Dan. And so when we get ready for the podcast, he comes on the screen and there's two people there, and Dan's like, "Hey, how's it going? Hey, this is my friend Kansas Carradine. I just thought I'd bring her along and join me on the podcast." And so we recorded a podcast with Dan with Kansas in it, but it didn't end up making the cut because the internet wasn't good enough. We have never actually released that podcast because it just kept cutting in and out. But so Kansas, she is the daughter of the actor David Carradine, and Kansas was a trick rider and trick roper in Cavalier for quite a long time. And so I got to know Kansas a little bit, so I wanted to have Kansas on the podcast. So Kansas came on the podcast, and then sometime last year I saw Kansas somewhere, and I had told her about the Gaucho Derby, and she had said, "Oh, I wish I could do that." And I totally forgot about that. So then about November 2023, I had a message from Eric Cooper, who runs the Gaucho Derby, and Eric said, "Hey, do you know anybody, we've had someone drop out. Do you know anybody who might want to last minute get in the Gaucho Derby?" And I said, "Well, I know someone who had expressed an interest in doing it." So I put Eric and Kansas in contact with each other, and pretty soon Kansas is doing the Gaucho Derby. And so she went to Stevie's for a boot camp, and then she went up to Placerville, California, which is where the Tevis Cup is, the big endurance ride, and started riding with some endurance people up there. And then here probably 3 weeks ago, maybe 4 weeks ago now, Kansas contacted me. She said, "Hey, I'm going to go to Southern California and do an endurance race. I'm borrowing this guy's endurance horses. I'm going to do an endurance race. Do you want to come?" There's a 50 and a 30 and a 50 and a 30, so you could choose any of them. So I contacted the guy with the horses, and he said, "Yeah, I got horses for you." So here a couple of weeks ago, I went to Southern California, out in the desert there, to a place called Ridgecrest, and the plan was to do this endurance race. And so Kansas and I decided we were going to do a mini Gaucho Derby camp thing. So we took our tents, set our tents up, had our little camp stove. So the plan was we were not going to, have any outside influences. We weren't going to. Andrew had a gooseneck there, but we, living quarter trailer, and he offered us to stay in there. I'm like, "No, we're not going to stay in there. We're going to stay in our tents and the whole bit." And like I said, there was a 30 and a 50 and a 30. And so the Friday, I decided I wanted to learn more about the vetting part of the whole thing. So I stayed back at camp there and helped the vets out all day. Kansas did a 30 miler, which she did well on. Then on Saturday, we all saddled up. Andrew was this guy's name. Andrew Gerhard, really cool guy. So Andrew and Kansas and I saddled up on Saturday, and we start out on the 50, and the 50 was really cool. Maybe the first second vet station we came to was at a place called Tronus Pinnacles National Park, and this place, it's got the most amazing rock formations, and it was actually used in the original Star Wars, these rock formations, and it was also used in not the last Planet of the Apes, but the Planet of the Apes before that. And that what was really interesting. So Kansas was taking pictures of it, sending them to her husband, because her husband, Elan, he was originally a trampolinist, and then he got involved in Cirque du Soleil, and then from Cirque du Soleil he went to Cavalier, and he was the artistic director of Cavalier. So, and he's very big into movement and stuff. So he had finished with Cavalier a couple of years ago and got hired by maybe Fox Studios, I'm not sure, but hired to go to Australia where they were filming the latest Planet of the Apes, and he was a movement coach for Planet of the Apes. So he had to teach the actors to move like 3 different types of monkeys: apes, chimps, and I forget what the other one was, maybe orangutans. So yeah, they lived in Australia for 6 months while he was working on Planet of the Apes. So Kansas was taking pictures at this place to send to her husband because it was another setting for one of the previous Planet of the Apes. So that was a really cool spot. So anyway, we left there, we kept riding, and about mile 35, my wonderful mare, Martina, she came up a bit lame, and so Andrew and Kansas went on and finished the 50. I got off and had to lead her for a while till we got to where someone could pick me up and get rescued. So we got taken back to camp, and then Andrew had an extra horse, so then the next day I rode a 30. So I got to ride a 35 and a 30. And in my preparation, up at Stevie's and at the Gaucho Academy in Argentina, I found that riding distances, when I'm not used to riding distances, at least for me, the thing that was sore the next day were your inner thighs, inner and back of your thighs. So while you're riding, your knees and ankles can get kind of sore, but the next morning when you get out of bed, it's the backs and inside of your thighs that get sore, and they're the same muscles that get sore riding bareback. And so what I've been doing for quite a while now is doing a lot of riding bareback. I ride bareback, either in the arena or we'll ride bareback around the hillside here. So we've got 8 horses that live in a pasture out there, and I will go and hop on one of them, probably Ray usually, and ride around with those other horses all loose and gallop around the trees and stuff. And so when I went to that endurance ride in Southern California, I was wondering, after doing the 50, I didn't get to complete the 50, but I rode 35, which is about 10 miles further in one day than I've ever ridden before. And I thought, how am I going to be rolling out of bed the next morning? And I got out of the tent and could do squats, and I wasn't sore at all. So I was like, okay, the bareback riding's working. And then, I did the 30 on Sunday. I backed that 35 up with the 30 on Sunday, and then Monday morning, roll out of bed, and I felt great. So I've been doing lots of bareback riding in preparation for it. And probably the other thing I've been doing is I got on this calisthenics program, which is just using her whole body weight to do stuff. And I probably feel stronger than I ever have, really. And I'm still probably not, I'm not as prepared enough as I need to be, but that's as prepared as, I leave in 4 days. I leave to go down there, so I'm not as prepared as I could be, but so this is going to be quite a challenge for me. I think I have talked to people who have done it, and they said it will break you. You will come up against your edges. You will get to a point to where you're probably going to throw yourself on the ground and scream and cry and go, I can't do this, I can't take another step, I can't get back on that horse, I can't, whatever. And then you're in the middle of, if I was at home here and I got that bad, I could call somebody to help me out, whatever. There is no help out there. You're out there in the middle of the wilds of Patagonia, and you just got to get over it, get over yourself, and get back on and do it again. So I'm interested to see where this journey takes me. I've been experimenting for quite a few years now, with therapy and different retreats and plant medicine journeys, trying to get to the bottom of some of my stuff. And I get this kind of feeling, this idea that this is going to be probably do a better job of getting to the bottom of my stuff than any of the other things I've ever done. And I think I'm kind of ready for that. I think some of those other things have taken me as far as they want to take me for a while, and I do think that this is going to be the next step in my journey. What else can I tell you about this Gaucho Derby? I think there's 35, 40 of us, something like that, doing it. And reading the bios of the other people who are doing this thing, like one of them was like, yeah, I've just finished riding across Kyrgyzstan on stallions, and one's just run a marathon near the North Pole, and another one has been a whitewater rafting guide for years, and one of them is really good at navigating, got the navigating chops on the Arctic Sea or something or other, just a whole bunch of really adventurous people. So like I said before, some of the people you meet on these adventures is, you know, half the fun. But what else can I tell you about this race? I think I've told you about the vet things. So with the horses, so you ride 7 horses, well, you get to ride 7 different horses, and I think they said every third vet station is a horse station. So with endurance racing, I think you've got to be below 65 beats. Your horse has to be below 65 beats a minute when you come into the vet check. These ones have to be below 55. You carry, you have a, not only do you have your GPS that tells you where the next vet stations are, but you have like a beacon on you, and they have an SOS beacon. And so if you get into serious trouble, you can press your SOS beacon and call for help. But they don't really want to help you. Like, part of this is, you know, a tent pole snaps and you've got to be able to fix it. I actually had that when we camped down in the desert there for the endurance race. I had a tent pole snap and didn't know anything about preparing how to repair tent poles, and now I know how to repair a tent pole and have all that tent pole repairing things. So, you know, your tack might break, so you've got to take duct tape, super glue, zip ties, and all that's got to fit in your pack under your weight. Parachute cord, you know, so it's about being resourceful in places. But yeah, they don't want to come and get you or help you unless you are in some pretty serious trouble. So yeah, I think that's about all I can tell you guys about it. But that's, you know, so you won't see anything from me on social media for about a month because I'm going to be out in the wilderness and off grid. But I'm so thankful to everybody that's been a part of this. You know, from Stevie for telling me about it, Chloe for you know, dragging me to Mongolia and riding those camels, because if I hadn't just ridden camels 300 kilometres across the Gobi Desert, I might not have said, oh yeah, I can sign up for a 500 kilometre horse race. You know, my wife Robin, who is, you know, puts up with all my traipsing around the countryside trying to get ready for this thing and looking after everything here at home while I'm gone, both for the preparation and for this race. All the people I've met at both the camps at Stevie's as well as on the academy last year, you know, talking to each one of them probably gave me a little tool in my toolbox. And you know, when I left Stevie's last October, when I finished there, you know, camping in the tent so many nights in a row and kind of getting the flow of whole things, I kind of felt like, yeah, I'm ready as far as of the camping stuff and the logistics of all that stuff. Probably wasn't as fit as I needed to be, but like I said, I don't think I'm as fit as I need to be now. So if anybody knows who David Goggins is, I'm kind of, I think I'm going to be doing some of this David Goggins style, which means I don't have the preparation for parts of it, but I'm just got to go with it. There's a lot of walking, you know, like there's places where you've got to get off your horse and lead it up a mountain or lead it down a mountain, and so that's probably going to be the hard part for me because I don't think I'm as aerobically fit as I need to be. Yeah, so, you know, a lot of people to thank, and I'm thankful to be able to do this. I'm thankful to be able to share this with you guys. We are going to be filming the whole thing. I've got a GoPro plus my phone, so there should be plenty of footage to share afterwards. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this episode of Journey on TV, both the Journey on Ranch TV, I suppose, both the stories and some of the footage that you get to see, some of the pictures you get to see. Some are mine, some I took off the Gaucho Derby Facebook group. But anyway, you can follow along with the race. All you can tell, there's a website, and I'm not sure what it is. I guess if you go to the gauchoderby.com, they'll tell you where it is on there, but you can follow along. So every rider has a designated call sign, and that's how they track you from the GPS thing that you're on. And so my call sign's WSC. Everybody's got a different 3 initial call sign, and so you'll be able to get on that website and actually track and see where I am and see where Dan is and see where Kansas is. And see where everybody is in the whole race. So anyway, I'm going to sign out. Hope you enjoyed this episode of Johnny on Ranch TV, and hopefully I'll be around to record another one here in a month or so.